now we will begin the last section on concluding questions and answers. The first question is addressed to Swami Atmarupananda. Where is the element of bhakti in Jnana Yoga?
Okay, thank you, Mahati. So the element of bhakti in Jnana Yoga, that is Shankaracharya, just paraphrasing Shankaracharya, he says that bhakti is the intense desire to attain to the reality. And so he expands the definition of bhakti. Now, a follower of bhakti yoga would say that no, bhakti means supreme love for God. That's the way that Narada defines bhakti in the Narada Bhakti Sutras. And so for a traditional bhakta, devotion means specifically not love for anything else, not love for Brahman or love for the discipline of Jnana Yoga or anything like that. It means specifically love for God as person, as Ishvara. But again, all of these ideas can be expanded. So that's part of the answer. There's more to the answer and probably a more useful part to the answer, which I'll come to in just a moment. But one idea is devotion in the path of knowledge is devotion to the ideal of Jnana Yoga and to the instruction and to the attainment of the state of knowledge. But you find that in Jnana Yoga, that many practitioners of Jnana Yoga and many of the scriptures of Jnana Yoga express extraordinary devotion to the spiritual teacher. The place that God takes in the system of traditional bhakti, devotion to God. In Jnana Yoga, that type of devotion is directed towards the spiritual teacher, recognizing the spiritual teacher as the instrument of my liberation. It's the grace and the knowledge given from the teacher to the disciple, which allows me, the disciple, to attain to liberation. Yes, I may be the self. I may always be the self. I have never not been the self, but I don't know it. And it's the teacher who, through his grace or her grace, because in Hinduism, a woman, even traditionally, may just as well be a spiritual teacher. Through the grace of the teacher, I know that. And so you have, of course, things like the Guru Gita. Om Guru Brahma, Guru Vishnu, Guru Devo Maheshwara, Guru Deva Param Brahma, Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I salute the Guru, who is Brahma, the creator, who is Vishnu, the sustainer, who is Shiva, the great God. I worship the teacher who is the supreme Brahman itself. And then the Guru Gita goes on with many other verses. Akhanda mandalakaram vyaptam yena characharam tatparam darshidam yena tasmai shri gurave namah. I offer my worshipful salutations to the teacher who makes known to me that state of his or her reality pervading the whole universe. That verse can be interpreted in a couple of different ways, but let me interpret it this way, that the Guru who gives me the knowledge that that teacher who is Brahman pervades this whole universe in unbroken unity. And it goes on like that. Another way that devotion comes into the tradition of jnana, the path of jnana, was referred to by Swami Sarvapriyananda yesterday, and that is the first verse of the Avadhuta Gita, the Avadhuta Gita, which says, the first half of the verse says, Ishwaranugrahadeva pumsam advaita vasana. Only through the grace of God, Ishvara, only through the grace of God does the desire for Advaita arise in the heart. The rest of the Avadhuta Gita doesn't mention the personal God, doesn't mention Ishvara. It talks about the knowledge of the self, but it says only through the grace of God does one conceive the desire for the attainment of Advaita. And of course, if we are followers of Sri Ramakrishna, we also know, oh, and I'll finish with this because my time is up. We also know the story of Totapuri, who had attained to non-dual knowledge, but Sri Ramakrishna gave him the further teaching that it was through the grace of the Divine Mother that he had attained to Advaitic knowledge. And so finally, there's not really a contradiction between the idea of devotion to God and the attainment to knowledge, but in these ways I mentioned are ways that people have actually recognized devotion in the path of knowledge.
Thank you, Swami. Swami Sarvapriyananda, where is the element of karma yoga and jnana yoga?
Well, this would refer to the matrix of sadhana, of spiritual practice I mentioned. You will recall that 3x3 matrix I talked about, where if the problem is ignorance, I don't know myself as Brahman, the solution should be knowledge, to know myself as Brahman. And the method would be jnana yoga, the path of knowledge. But then if the problem is the scattered, distracted nature of the mind, then the solution would be concentration, focus, and the method would be meditation. But even that is not possible because of the problem of impurity of the mind. And the solution would be purity of the mind, chitta shuddhi. And the method there is karma yoga. So karma yoga, as a beginning, preliminary thing is that karma yoga is foundational for jnana. Without the purification of the mind, which karma yoga provides, further spiritual practices are not possible, are not effective. They're possible, but they're not effective. And just by the way, when you talk about it like this, an impression is created, oh, first I should purify my mind for maybe 40 years, and then I should take initiation and meditate for 20 years, and then come to the workshop in Dallas only when I'm 80 years old or something like that. No, all of these go together. All of these go together. Devotion, meditation, work, and inquiry, self-inquiry, they go together. The different masters in classical Vedanta, whether it's Ramanuja's Vishishtadvaita, Madhvacharya's Dvaita Vedanta, or Shankara's Advaita Vedanta, all of them more or less assign the same role to Karma Yoga, that it is foundational, it is preparatory, it's purificatory. Why would it be purificatory? What's so special about Karma Yoga that it can purify the mind so powerfully? The core of this impurity is desire, and desire also, the core of it is selfishness. So selfishness means this body, this mind, this one person. I am all about gratifying this person, all our efforts. Now that supreme selfishness, that has to be overcome. That's what gathers all impurities into the mind. And Karma Yoga reverses this. It makes us work for the welfare of all. And Swami Vivekananda says it's counterintuitive, but it's actually by working for the welfare of all that you yourself become much happier. What you wanted, happiness for the self, fulfillment for the self, that comes not by working for the self. That would be intuitive, that I'll work for myself, so I'll be happy. No, it never worked. But when I work for others, when I live for others, then I also become much happier directly. Swami Vivekananda says, those who live for others, they really live, who live for others. The others are more dead than alive. So Karma Yoga is very powerful as preparation. At the other end of the spectrum, for advanced non-dualists, for those who are enlightened, Jivan Muktas, for them, karma would be an expression of that enlightenment. See, initially karma is a preparation, but karma is an expression of that enlightenment for those who are enlightened. I realize that I am Brahman, the entire world is Brahman, Brahma karma, all work is also Brahman. So that is like the, not only the highest of Jnana Yoga, but you see Karma Yoga also culminates there, that all action becomes that same reality. I, the doer, the action that is done, for whom the person it is done, all of that becomes same Brahman. Then there is no motive at all for doing anything for one little person, this one person. So that is the range of Karma Yoga in Jnana Yoga, from the preparatory, preliminary, purificatory, foundational aspect to the aspect of expressing the ultimate reality.
Very good. Now, both of you, Swamis, how can we best merge Karma Yoga and Jnana Yoga in our lives? You've already talked some about that. Swami Arupananda, do you have anything further to say on that score?
Yes, let me say that again, as I had mentioned, and as Swami Sarvapriyananda has just mentioned, and also mentioned previously, that the traditional view of Karma Yoga is that it's preparatory, and Swami Sarvapriyananda has beautifully explained why it was considered preparatory, because it is the effective means of overcoming the mechanism of desire, which is based on selfishness and identity with a particular body and mind. Swami Vivekananda presented Karma Yoga, and it seems in the Gita that Sri Krishna also presents it as a yoga in itself. That is, not just it's what you do first and then you go to other things. However, there is a little a statement of Swami Vivekananda's in his conversations with Sharat Chandra Chakravarti, which is, I've never seen anyone refer to it, but it's very important, because Shankaracharya says that it's knowledge which gives liberation. No amount of work can give liberation, and that is true. And it's philosophically true, it's experientially true, that work doesn't give liberation. And so he insists that not through 1,000 actions can one attain to liberation, it's only through knowledge. That's a fundamental principle of Vedanta. And so therefore Karma Yoga itself, that is even selfless action, can't give liberation in itself. It can only purify the mind. Swami Vivekananda said that all the 4 yogas are independent paths to liberation. However, in this statement in his conversations with Sharat Chandra, he says, I recognize that to attain to knowledge, meaning enlightenment, it only comes through knowledge. And that statement he recognizes, it only comes through knowledge. The knowledge has to be there for there to be enlightenment. The knowledge has to come. And then he says that Karma Yoga brings the mind to such purity that the knowledge, when knowledge is given, it's effective. But it's not just unselfish work by itself that gives enlightenment. That can bring to the mind to such a state of purity, such a state of clarity, that when knowledge is given, Tattvamasi, thou art that, then immediately in the disciple's mind, Aham Brahmasmi arises, because the mind is so prepared. So even Swamiji recognized that Karma Yoga by itself, without the giving of knowledge, that it doesn't give liberation. However, he felt that it was a path in itself up to the point where one could become the fit recipient of knowledge. And the two can go together very well, where it's not first bringing the mind to such a state of perfect purity that all you have to do is go to a teacher to get the knowledge. No, you can be working with both together, so that it's not first you come up to this level and then you take the last little step, but the two are going together. The final thing let me say is that you see the truth of what Swamiji said about Karma Yoga and the need for knowledge in people like Ishwar Chandra Vidyasagar, and someone like, what's his name, Sir Arthur Eddington. Ishwar Chandra Vidyasagar, those of you from India, especially Bengal, remember his name. Those of you who have read the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna remember his name, because he was a great philanthropist, a great learned man, a great philanthropist. So Sri Ramakrishna went to see him because of his fame and his great-heartedness, and told him that all you need to do is to turn the direction, and he told others also, all Ishwar Chandra needs to do is to turn the direction of his attention, and quickly he will attain to God. Ishwar Chandra didn't seem to be interested in doing that, so we don't know if he ever did before the end of his life. But he had attained to such a state through his Karma Yoga that not much was needed in order to attain to knowledge. Sri Ramakrishna recognizes that. Sir Arthur Eddington, the great British physicist, he came to Bellarmut and met Swami Shivananda, Mahapurush Maharaj. And after meeting him, Mahapurush Maharaj told others that he is on the verge of realization. All he needs to do is to change the direction of his inquiry, and he will attain it very easily. Later, someone asked Albert Einstein, an Indian scientist, asked Albert Einstein, "Sir, have you had an experience or an intuition of the absolute?" And Einstein said, "No, I haven't, but Sir Arthur Eddington has."
Swami Sarvapriyananda, do you have anything to add to this?
I think that was wonderful. I didn't know this anecdote about Sir Arthur Eddington. That's really very instructive.
Yeah.
I'll come at it from another direction, the importance of bhakti in this equation. So Ramanuja, he says that notice, for attainment of Brahmajnana, control of the senses is very important. And without Brahmajnana, without enlightenment, perfect control of the senses is not possible. But this is a vicious circle. To attain enlightenment, you need perfect control of the senses, but without enlightenment, you don't have control of the senses. How will you get enlightenment in that case? And he says he uses this as an argument for introducing bhakti, love of God. What happens is that which scatters our sensory powers in the world, those things are focused and pulled by the very beauty, perfection, power of God in whatever form you worship. So devotion to God makes sense control much easier. Similarly, devotion to God makes karma yoga much easier. Devotion to God, bhakti, can be a beautiful bridge between karma yoga and jnana yoga. Just as it's a beautiful bridge between meditation and jnana. So bhakti is a very potent addition to the mix. That's what I wanted to say.
Very good. Now we have a wrap-up session, but I think you've wrapped everything up, both of you. Do you have anything to add? Swami Atmarupanan?
I don't have anything special to add. I just again will add reaffirm my thanks to Mataji and to her team, and my joy in being with Swami Sarvapriyananda, and my joy of being with all of those who have attended. I myself have enjoyed it, gained greatly from it, and wish all of you well in your spiritual path. However it is that you follow it, whatever combination of the yogas that you follow, Godspeed on your path.
Very nice. Swami Sarvapriyananda, anything to add?
I just want to offer my pranams to you, to revered Swami Atmarupanji. Namaste to everybody here. I pray to Sri Ramakrishna, Ma Sharada, and Swami Vivekananda to bless all of us. May we attain to spiritual illumination in this very life itself, make our lives blessed, and be a blessing for all others around us.
Thank you.